Entering the atmosphere in T minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Well, hello there, folks, and welcome to the Omega Metroid podcast. I am your host, Doominal Crossing, and, you know, as it goes, when I'm your host, it means we are Andy Spatiriulus, we are Dakota Laskiulus, but you already read the title, so you already know that we have one heck of a show for you guys tonight. We got a huge party going to continue our celebration of the Metroid Prime 2 Echo's 20th anniversary, and to help celebrate with me, I brought some friends along with me today. I got Doeboy, I got Trav Guy, I got Metroid Guy. So much testosterone up in this place. Folks, how are you doing? And introduce yourself to our lovely audience today.
Who's going first? I'll go first. Hi,
right.
I'm Travis. I'm doing well today. I woke up late. I'm here, and I thought we were recording this an hour later. So, oopsie. I'm here now, though. I'm gonna pass it to Doughboy. How you doing, Doughboy?
I'm doing great. Looks like you're maybe West Coast and Seattle area because it's raining. I was just there. Just dealt with like 2 weeks of rain. That was cool. Definitely not a place in the Metroid universe in any way. That is actually a photo or video feed of Seattle. Hi, I'm Doughboy. I didn't wake up late. I wish I did though. I actually woke up early and couldn't fall back asleep. But fortunately that was brought on by my cat. If she does come over, I might switch cameras briefly so that we can all gaze at how beautiful she is. I've been playing Metroid games for a while, and I play Samus in Smash at a competitive level, and I'm kind of a Samus guy there. And Metroid and Smash and stuff and things, and I stream, and sometimes I make videos. And that's good enough. What about you, Trav Guy? Not Trav Guy.
Was I supposed to talk about my Metroid bona fides? I forgot.
We can do that. I'm gonna let that Metroid guy go first. But yeah, we could actually bring it back. You know, talk about our Metroid history after that.
Yeah. So hello there. I'm that Metroid guy. I do a lot of exclusively Metroid stuff on my channel. I do a lot of Samus suit reviews. Next up, I'm going to do a lore video on Quadraxis and the quads.
Sick.
I finished Metroid Prime 2 Echoes an hour and a half before this. So just in time for this and just the 20th anniversary in general.
Absolutely. Happy anniversary. But yeah, Trav, where did you get your start in Metroid? You seemed very interested to talk about that.
Oh, boy. All right. I'll go as quick as I can. So basically, family growing up already loved Metroid. I'm the youngest of like 5 siblings, and the second youngest, 16 when I was born. It's a pretty big age gap. So like, I already had a Super Nintendo in the house. They're really big gamers. Played Super Metroid once, got so excited that I yanked on the controller, tilted the cartridge, deleted all the save data. It was really scary. But I got into Metroid at a pretty young age, but like I didn't know much about it. Didn't think like, okay, I played Mario, like, okay, how do I get to the next level? And then I want to fast forward to like I was 8 years old. I saw my sister's now husband, then boyfriend. No, I think they were married at that time. Playing it on the TV, and they were at the Mother Brain fight. And I'm like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. I have to play more. And then since then, I've just been obsessed. It's literally in my top 3 game series. It fluctuates which one it is, but it's somewhere in there.
Yeah, we're known to be Metroid enjoyers on this podcast. Many people are saying this.
Just a little.
Just a little bit.
It's just a little bit.
Yeah, I guess for the sake of consistency, I'll tell my story. I've already said it on the podcast before, but you know, like most people, you know, Smash Brothers was my introduction to Samus. One of my mom's students, because she's a high school teacher, one of her students just decided to unload a Super Nintendo, and that also included a Super Game Boy with a copy of Metroid 2 on it. And unfortunately, I was too young to really appreciate Metroid 2. That has changed quite a bit nowadays. But yeah, I didn't quite get into it, so I traded it for Donkey Kong Land. But once I saw Metroid Prime in Blockbuster, once I saw that cover, I was like, ooh, I know that character. That's who I play in Smash. And I knew in the moment, I was like, it was calling out to me. And so I played it, and the rest is history.
Sweet.
Love that.
But yeah, folks, it's so good to see you all here. I love all your content that you post online. I'm eagerly awaiting Trav's Echoes review. I know you just did the remaster of the Prime 1 retrospective, which was so fantastic. But yeah, we're continuing our Echoes anniversary celebration this week. But before we get into today's topic, we actually got some pretty good Metroid news today. It's technically going to be tomorrow when all of you lovely viewers are watching this. But yeah, today, just a few hours before we started recording, we got a surprise announcement of an officially licensed Metroid Prime art book. I'm actually going to pull this up on my web browser right here. So it's called the Metroid Prime 1 through 3, a visual retrospective. And it's being developed by Piggyback, who's an official guide maker. They've been doing stuff since '99. They've done a couple of projects with Nintendo as well, with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. But this is their first time doing Metroid. And according to them, it's been developed in collaboration with Nintendo and Retro Studios. This art book showcases concept drawings, sketches, and assorted illustrations from the Metroid Prime series, with an extensive range of behind-the-scenes, high-quality artwork. This hardcover anthology spans more than 20 years of Metroid Prime development and includes exclusive commentary from Nintendo producer Kensuke Tanabe, as well as the esteemed Retro Studios. And yeah, we haven't really seen the inside pages of this, so I'm not sure how much of this concept art is going to be, I guess, recycled from what we've already seen, or how much of it is going to be brand new. Either way, though, I have always wanted something like this, and I never actually thought that Nintendo would do it, so I am extremely excited. The cover looks incredible. I love that little orange bronze embossed finish that they gave Samus on the front there. I'm definitely getting a second copy to keep sealed and put on my shelf. Yeah, this thing looks awesome.
The thing that I'm the most excited for, even if it is all recycled, it mentions that it's going to have commentary from the I don't know if it's from the artists or the developers or what, of just in general commentary. So I'm like, I want to know what they're saying about this back then.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm really excited for that. As someone who likes to dig deep into that kind of information, especially in my videos, like that's kind of why I started doing YouTube, so I can make money doing what I love doing, because I'm a freak. I'm so excited to just read more about this.
Yeah, the commentary is definitely the thing that it definitely excites me the most too, especially because, again, that's a thing that Nintendo in general just doesn't really do a lot in general, because like yeah, they're very secretive. You know, a lot of their developers aren't online on Twitter, and so you don't really get an opportunity to to see how the cookie is made, if you will. And so it's a really good opportunity to get some real in-depth knowledge from both current and former staff. Really, the only opportunities we really had was the interviews that Kiwi Talks has been doing for the last 2 or 3 years or so with some of the former staff. We haven't really gotten a lot of stuff from people who still work from Retro or even NCL based in Japan. So having this opportunity, I think, is absolutely incredible, and I'm just eagerly awaiting to learn about my favorite trilogy in all of gaming.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty curious if it's going to, like, it technically it says it doesn't, but it's also Nintendo and they just do what they want when they want. So I'm curious if it will have Prime 4 stuff in there. Also curious if they'll have Hunters in there, which I feel like it might get a nod or like a few pages. I don't think it would be a big section of it, but
did Retro work on Hunters?
They
No.
were
Was that-
yeah, it was
I believe they sent assets to Next Level Games. I think that was them, right?
Nintendo Software Technology. They did Hunters.
Okay.
Yeah, Retro.
Yeah, as far as I understand, Retro helped out. They gave assistance,
Gotcha.
sort of thing.
Yeah, they were given a special thanks in the credits, and I want to say like the renders, or at least the concept art for the Hunters was done internally at Retro, but I believe Yeah, but the vast majority of it was done by NST.
I remember reading something a while ago that like the sound effects from Prime, some of them were like the same MP3 file or whatever for hunters, that type of stuff.
Interesting. I know there's a couple, like I know the item collection jingle that's been used in the Prime trilogy. I know they reused that in Hunters, but as far as I'm aware, I can't remember anything else that was reused, not the top of my head at least.
It might just,
Hunters
I think
is
it's just like basic stuff, like maybe Samus going into Morph Ball or
the Morph Ball sound is definitely the same. Hunters is the only Metroid game I could think of that I actually haven't finished.
Interesting.
I own
Really?
it. I just haven't beaten it.
It's an interesting ending.
I just got a modified emulator working that lets it play with mouse and keyboard controls, so I'm gonna play with that.
Oh, the Melon Prime DS.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really nice. Unfortunately, mouse and keyboard just really cramps my hands, and so I can only play it for like about 10 minutes at most. Where it's like, okay, time for a break. The original DS controls somehow cramp my hands less than the mouse and keyboard. I don't get it.
Wow.
Interesting.
I have a grip for my 3DS because when Samus Returns came out, I like couldn't play that game for more than 20 minutes. It hurt my hands so much. I had to get like a extendo grip that made it bigger, and then I could play for more than like an hour finally.
Interesting. I played that for 15 hours straight on release day.
Nice.
It was incredible. I had the 3D setting on, I had headphones in, I played 100% the entire day. I regretted it the next day because, ow, my hands.
Oh, yeah, okay. I'm glad to hear that. I was
Yeah.
like, man, what's wrong with my hands? But okay.
Yeah,
You
I
just
didn't go
powered
back to
through
that
it.
game for a bit. Yeah. Look,
Yeah.
going back to the art book thing, like it reminds me of in some of the concept art for Echoes, some of the storyboarding that they showed off either in game or somewhere else. That, in particular, the scene where Dark Samus is introduced, there's annotations saying like why Dark Samus tilts her head when she does. It's to show off
really?
cunning, it's to show off intelligence, it's to show off like she's analyzing, but it's so subtle. It's awesome. Like Echoes and just the Prime games in general are why I like concept art so much, and hearing from devs about why they make the decisions they do. Yeah, so
That's
I'm really
exciting.
excited for the art book. Yeah.
So yeah,
If Trace is in it.
the what?
I said I'm only buying it if Trace is in it.
Well, I mean, they didn't list Hunter, so I don't know about that. They are including Metroid Prime Remastered, which I thought was pretty awesome. So, because the Prime Remastered also had some unlockable exclusive concept art there. So I'm very curious if like we also get some Prime Remastered commentary too, because I'm very curious to see like what that whole
Yeah,
process was like in adapting that.
I'm really excited to see whether or not there was like a decision early on to like fully respect the original art style, or if they were going to change some things and then ended up not. I'm really excited to see if that's the case.
Yeah, learning more about
absolutely.
That process would be pretty interesting. Like being a fly on the wall for those meetings of like, all right, so we're gonna do it, but what's the strategy here? That'd be an interesting one.
But yeah, I'm very excited. It's dropping summer of next year. It also just went live for pre-order on Amazon. It's $49.99 US, $69.99 Canadian. Sorry, Andy. But yeah, I already got 2 copies pre-ordered for me because again, one to open,
Nice.
one to keep sealed. So yeah, very very excited and unexpected. Like again, this was just kind of came out of nowhere.
That's kind of how Metroid news has been since like Dread got announced.
Yeah.
What I hope is that this is just more evidence of this is not being the beginning of stuff, but like the frequency of Metroid content or things you can own in some capacity were very sparse for a long time, then slowly picked up in frequency. So I'm hoping this is like Metroid's gonna get thrown a few more bones. Like Zelda gets stuff all the time, Mario gets stuff like every day. Hoping we get like more Metroid merch. Like I do think an art book and stuff is really cool, but that doesn't totally get my gears turning. I don't know what necessarily would, like maybe, I don't know. There's definitely stuff where I'd see it and go, oh my god, I have to get this. With that, like I'm cool with seeing like someone's repost of a page on Twitter or something. But I hope we get more merch that spans the genres of merch, basically. And fingers crossed that this is just like how they're starting it.
I am encyclopedia.
Yeah, I'm definitely a sucker for Metroid merch. Definitely known to spend more than any sane human should on it. I weirdly enough, Metroid Samus Returns of all the games, I remember that just having a huge onslaught of merch.
So much stuff.
Yeah,
so much stuff. And then Dread had like close to nothing.
Yeah, and it was like, of all the games you're going to do the merch push, that's the game. But yeah, they barely did anything for Dread in comparison.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I will say at least Dread got those sick amiibo. I have those hidden. Unfortunately, my box is blocking where they're in my display cabinet there. But yeah, I think Prime 4 is going to get one too. I imagine Prime 4 getting like a Samus Silex set. That seems right to me.
Oh, that'd be sick as hell. I'd love that.
Okay, now the wallet's coming out.
Yeah, now it's flowing.
Yeah, Doeboy is that one gif where the guy's just like bum bum bum. Just smacking his card on the table.
Yep.
But yeah, Guide announced today. We're all excited for it. And one of those games featured in the guide is called Metroid Prime 2 Echoes. Oh my gosh, what a segue! Metroid Prime 2 20th anniversary. What? Whoa. So yeah. Today's episode, as you folks might have seen in the title, is called Redefinitively Ranking, which is an kind of, I don't want to say a spin-off, but kind of a remastering of our Definitive Ranking series, which is basically where me and the other hosts, we get together and we grade a specific game in the series on a number of categories. The thing is, though, every single game that we've graded so far has been one that we, haven't dedicated one to. Echoes, I believe, is the first, maybe the second game that was ever talked about on the podcast. And more importantly, it was before I was on the podcast. And so I've never gotten to talk about Metroid Prime 2 Echoes before. And that's kind of what spawned the idea of, doing a guest episode. Let Andy and Dak, take a week off, and then let's bring in some new folks and give them a chance to talk about what I think is a criminally underrated Metroid game. The first Metroid Prime, obviously one of the greatest games ever made. Even if it didn't sell a lot of copies, you'll constantly hear, critics, talk about it online and putting it in the their top games of all time list. You don't really hear the same thing from Echoes and Corruption. And while Prime 1 is definitely my favorite, I think both of those other two games are also incredibly wonderful titles as well that deserve to be talked about. And so, yeah, we're here to do a redefinitive ranking and hear some brand new thoughts in Echoes in celebration for its anniversary. I'm very excited about this, guys.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to talking about it.
Hell yeah, just finished it, so I want to keep talking about it.
Yeah, so you got it fresh in your mind, so yeah, it'll be really cool to hear your thoughts.
It was the raw experience too. Native GameCube.
Nice.
Ooh.
Oh, there
you had to deal with the boost in Spider Guardian.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah, I have a feeling we'll be talking about those bosses later. In fact, we almost certainly will, because that's one of the categories. In fact, let's talk about those categories right now. So these are our categories in order that we're going to be talking about today. So we're discussing the world and atmosphere. That's just kind of like, the tone of a game. Probably one of the first things that one thinks about when playing a Metroid game is just how atmospheric, how isolationist it is. And then kind of related to that, our next category is the art direction. After that is the story. Then we have the pacing and progression. Then we have the gameplay and the quote unquote gimmick, the items and abilities, the areas, the enemies / bosses, which we our last episode was literally ranking the Echoes bosses, so I'll be regurgitating a lot of that from last episode. The expansions and power-ups, and then finally, my personal favorite category, the music, which, also shameless plug, I just released a video a couple weeks ago, about a 30 minutes just talking about Echoes music and analyzing it and talking about like all the really cool things that Kenji Yamamoto does with that music. Yeah, I'll probably be regurgitating a lot of that video when we get to that section as well. So yeah, I'll basically so I guess I will kick off the discussion with world and atmosphere, and then I'll just kind of let you guys guys jump in when you're ready. I might, if I notice someone isn't talking as much, I might call you out and try to ask you something. I don't know. We'll see how this goes. So yeah, let's get started with the world and atmosphere of Metroid Prime 2 Echoes, which I definitely think is in terms of atmosphere, definitely one of my favorites in this series. It has a very cold tone to it, and I've always described Dark Ether as, Andy and I were talking about this a few episodes ago, and I would not describe Dark Ether as like a horror atmosphere, but I describe it as very oppressive. And I think depending on who you are playing Echoes, that can be either a detriment or a positive. For me, I definitely love that oppressive atmosphere of Echoes. I think what's really unique about it too is just the way it's all the way paced as well, because Dark Ether, you're constantly getting damaged the whole time you're there, and the rate at which you get damaged could get very old after a while, but I feel like the point at which you get the dark suit, it gives you a little bit of a safety net there, which I really like. So you still get that hard oppressive atmosphere for the first area, but then with the dark suit, you're still getting that throughout the game, but the annoyance factor, at least for me, is mitigated significantly because of that. And so I feel like, at least for me, Metroid Prime 2 really gets to have its cake and eat it too in that. And it all comes back in the gameplay, which I personally really like. I totally understand why some people might not be into it. While all of the worlds for the most part are definitely a lot more closely thematically tied in Echoes, you don't quite get as big of a diverse range of areas as you do in the first Metroid Prime. I mean, you go literally from fire to ice, from Magmor to Phendrana. You have your forest area. Every single area in Prime 1 is very distinct, whereas Echoes, I'd say they're still pretty distinct, but they definitely, for the most part, blur the lines a little bit closer together. From Temple Grounds to Aegon to Torvus. Sanctuary is kind of like your one big standout area that kind of stands apart from the rest art direction wise. But I personally really dig the consistency there myself.
To me, the environments of Echoes, they tell more of a story compared to that of Prime, and even Corruption. You have the war-torn ruins of Aegon, you have the submerged swamps of Torvus, and you have the corrupt halls of Sanctuary Fortress and stuff like that. It, to me, and the lifeless grounds of the temple as well. Just the narrative and environmental storytelling of Echoes is probably the best in the entire franchise, in my opinion. And especially with the littered corpses around, of the Marines in the temple grounds, and the Luminoth just all over the place. And then, as you say, the oppressive atmosphere of Dark Ether, it really hammers home that sense of, dare I say it, dread and hopelessness of the Luminoth. Because if I remember right, the Ether was mere minutes away from being completely eradicated by the Ying. And then Samus just comes crashing down the ceiling, and Umos is just you have to save us. So yeah, for me, the areas just tell a lot more of a story than that of Prime, and I love it for that.
Yeah, Samus literally walks in like, hello, chat.
Pretty accurate. I have some complex thoughts. Doughboy, do you want to go first? Or
Sure.
no, next?
Sure. So I'm gonna go off of my first time playing Echoes to touch on this one, because I think that's where my impression really started, and like it really hasn't changed. So I'm kind of like rewinding back to when I was 12 playing this. And I had played Prime, and so I remember getting the Nintendo Power magazine with the Prime 2 poster, which I think I actually have in there somewhere, and being so excited because I remember like reading little snippets about the Aang, and the game looked so much darker, and I was like so on board with that. I didn't think Metroid Prime 1 was not like dark enough or anything, but clearly Prime 2 took a darker, spookier turn. And I loved that about Fusion. I loved how generally spooky Fusion is. And it's not quite like horror genre, but it kind of like dips its toes into it with the SX and stuff. So I was like really excited to have that in Prime 2. And then it really just, to me, delivered on that. You see, as Gregory pointed out, you see the like bodies of Federation troopers. The Aang are like inherently terrifying. Sometimes they're huge. They can move really quickly. And especially seeing the normal world and then going into the dark world, and it's like you thought you understood what the world was, and now everything's scary and dreadful and terrifying and dark and evil. That to me is like the primary impression of the atmosphere I get from the game. And for my own personal taste, I think that narrowly beats Prime 1. That was one of the things that I think Prime 2, I don't want to say did better, because it didn't necessarily do better per se, but just my own personal taste, I like that stuff a lot. I like that about, you know, turning the focus on a different series. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, I loved what Twilight Princess did with Zelda, and I think Prime 2 did that with Metroid Prime. So huge fan of the world and atmosphere of Prime 2. Trav?
All right, I'm gonna be the odd man out. I like the atmosphere and everything of Prime 2. I think that aesthetically, it is more boring than Prime 1. I don't care for looking at it as much. Like Gregory said, there's a story to it, though. I'm way more forgiving about it once we, you know, delve deeper into the game. But I just think on the at surface level, I actually think Prime 2 looks kind of bland. But I think that there's a reason for that, and that is explained pretty well. But like, so much of the game is, at least until you get to like Sanctuary, a lot of the game is just grays, browns, and purples, and that's fine. I think that they did a good job. They made it very consistent, and then, you know, you get to Sanctuary and it punches you in the face. But it's I didn't quite grasp that as a kid when I played Prime 2 for the first time, because I didn't know how to read. No, I did know how to read. I just didn't. But it was one of those things that I didn't really learn to appreciate until I was an adult and replaying the game properly. So I think that the art direction with the environments, the atmosphere, everything is fantastic. Just, you know, surface level analysis, it took a long time to appreciate.
Yeah, and I think that's totally fair too. Like I said, especially in regards to Dark Ether, because it's very heavily saturated in dark purples, reds, and blacks and browns, and so all of the Dark Ether in particular really blends together up until you get to Sanctuary, and even the overworld, the light world environments. While they don't blend together as much, they still blend together a lot more than, like, again, in Prime 1, where you have very diverse environments. All kind of coming together. Yeah. And also, I forgot to say this at the beginning, by the way, we're ranking each of these categories out of 5 as well. So before we move on to the next, I'm gonna give Prime 2 a 5 here, and then we'll just go in reverse order from Doe to Metroid Guy to Trav Guy.
I heavily agree with like a lot of it does kind of look the same, especially relative to Prime. Prime has the standout like elemental areas. You like really know where you are pretty much at all times without having to like check a map. Where like in theory you might have to check a map to be like which part of the game am I in if you like forgot what you were doing. So I think in terms of the vibe that it gives, that's what's the 5 out of 5 to me. In terms of the uniqueness and the flavor of each region having a special impact, I do definitely agree that's weaker. So I'll give it a 4.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I can see that. I definitely agree with, again, the fact that it's like you don't have the greens, reds, whites, and like blues of like the Prime of like Phazon, Fendrano, and all that. But to me, like I said, it's the narrative of why the environments are the way that they are, especially learning of how the Luminoth react to how the environments have changed from what they were to what they are now. Just their devastation towards that because of the Leviathan impact. Just for that alone, like it has to be a 5 for me. It's so different to how the other Prime and even Metroid games like tell the environment, the story of the environment, that I just have to appreciate it.
But what's your score, though?
Definitely a 5.
I didn't see that coming.
I know it's a big shock to everyone.
Yeah. What if Gregory said a 1? What would have happened there?
Confusion.
So just so I'm on the same page as you guys, we're just giving it a score 1 to 5, 5 being good, 1 being
Yes.
bad. Okay, cool. When you said ranking, I was thinking like, okay, we're putting things on top of each other. So I'm like, okay, which environment is better than this one? And I'm like, oh, I don't want to think that hard right now.
No. We don't do thinking on this podcast. What?
Oh, thank God, I feel right at home.
Let me induct you into the Torvus Bog fandom.
There we go. I'm really bogging one out. So I mean, I think I'm gonna give it solely on like art direction. I'll probably just say like a 3, because for
3, okay.
all of its shortcomings, I think that it is still very consistent and it does a good job at conveying the tone that Prime 2 wants to do. Where even myself as a child could see that without reading much of the scan logs and everything.
Yeah, and if you folks see me on my phone, that's just because I'm writing all your scores down on this tally sheet right here. So don't worry, I'm still listening and paying attention to all your answers.
Can't believe you're ignoring me, bro.
So yeah, let's move on to the next art category now. Or not art category. The next category, which is art style, which we've already been talking about, kind of has a lot to do with the atmosphere. And this is one where I could really go in a bunch of different directions with this, because on one hand, the art direction contributes to the atmosphere, which I do think is a 5 out of 5. I do think, as has been discussed here, there are some definite weaknesses. While they don't bother me, I can still be very critical of it, particularly with Dark Aether. And I understand why Dark Aether in particular is very repetitive. I mean, the game was developed in less than 2 years, which literally impossible today. But even back then, 20 years ago, that was still a Herculean task for Retro Studios to pull off. And so, while I can be understanding of why Dark Aether looks the way it does, and while I don't mind it, I also do kind of have to ding the art direction a little bit on that. I do think there could have, I wish there was a little bit more done with Dark Aether aesthetically wise. That being said, this game also has Sanctuary Fortress, which might be my favorite art direction in anything ever made. I love this place so much. I remember stepping into Sanctuary Fortress for the first time and just like there's those wow moments when you're playing a game and you know, like, whoa, we're playing something extra special here. And Sanctuary Fortress, stepping into that main plaza, and that, you know, and we'll talk about the music later when that music, you know, starts playing too. Like that is a core memory for me, getting introduced to Sanctuary Fortress and just delving deeper and deeper and just seeing how far it goes. One of my favorite things that Retro really does, and they continue this in Prime 3 as well, is the amount of moving parts that they have in their areas. Even stuff that, like, would never matter, has absolutely no effect on the gameplay. You know, you go in Sanctuary Fortress and then there's so many, you know, not even enemies, but just robotics and machinery just moving around. It could be in the foreground, you can interact with it. It could be something in the background that you don't interact with at all, but it's still there to, you know, to look awesome and, you know, build the world. You have these, yeah.
Sorry,
yeah.
I got hacked by the thing that hacks you in Sanctuary Fortress.
I was about to say, you got resbitted there. But yeah, you have these random flying drones that are actually very important to the Echo speedrun. If you've seen Bash Prime's video on it, shout out to Bash Prime. But you have these random drones that literally don't attack you, they don't damage you, they serve no gameplay function, but they just fly around in the background. And if you want, you can even shoot them down. But why would you do that? That's just mean. But yeah, Sanctuary Fortress, I don't know. I feel like I have to give the art direction a 4, but man, does Sanctuary Fortress on its own make me want to carry that to a 5. But I'm gonna keep it to a 4 though.
So, question about these categories. So, one of the categories we have is enemies and bosses. Should I include the art direction of the enemies and bosses in the category of art direction or in the category of enemies and bosses?
They can be included in both, because like I was saying earlier, you know, we were talking about art direction for the atmosphere as well, and so yeah, they're very a lot of these can kind of like sync up with each other, and so you can kind of talk about it in one context versus another context. So yeah, use it, talk about it however you feel like.
Okay. Well, again, as someone who is very, like, especially as like a 12-year-old playing this game, like, definitely edgelord at that point in my life, and I still like spooky and dark things for a slew of reasons now. I loved the enemy and boss design, and so to me that art direction gets a 5. Some of my favorite enemies in any video game are in Prime 2. One that perhaps Gregory is working on a video for. But yeah, I do think the world itself is a weaker point, and like I would say like the enemy and boss, and maybe some of the environment design, like you just played a Gregory. What are the in Dark Aether, what are the pod ings called that look like big green beans and you shoot them and they drop?
Oh, I think it's ingworms. Could be wrong.
Okay, but you know what I mean, the green beans.
Yeah.
They have eyes and they're black. Yeah. Growing up, I never cared to look up the names of anything, and so they were just like the green beans to me. And yeah, like I liked the interactable stuff within the environment, but I do agree the environment doesn't, like, the art of the environment doesn't bang as hard. And there's now, where are we talking about the world and the atmosphere or the art direction? I don't know how to define those things, but I would average things again with a rating of a 4 from me.
So that was one thing I meant to say before. I had the thought spiraling in my mind and then I just totally lost it. But like, I would have scored in the previous category, the environments, I would have scored that lower if it wasn't for Sanctuary, because Sanctuary Fortress is just so cool. Sanctuary Fortress, is that the right name? I feel like that's not the right name.
It is.
It's the right.
2 words just go at Metal Gear. What are these? So like, the art direction overall, like, it's just so well done. I love how everything in the light world, both enemies, environments, even power-ups, bosses, everything contrasts with everything in the dark world. beautifully. Like they didn't just take a lot of these designs and go, what if we make it evil? Like they made it so many of the designs more interesting, and sometimes you'll see enemies in the dark world that don't have a light counterpart, and you just got to sit there and wonder like, oh, what was that like? It makes you think with everything that it is deliberately done and didn't do, in a way that maybe goes beyond art direction into more like world like writing or whatever. But whatever, I don't care. It's cool. Like the design of Dark Samus evolving throughout the game, how she has a different look every time you fight her. All of them look great, and you see that reflected through your journey as Samus becomes more light, I guess. Well, I guess darker and then light. And I love it. I think that I actually like the art direction more than Prime 1 and 3's, and I love the art direction in those, just because of this commitment to this theme of light and dark that they do, that I on the surface and even as a kid I wasn't too impressed by. I thought it was like, okay, another Nintendo game, light and dark. Like I already played Link to the Past as a kid, so just like, oh, this is interesting, why are they doing this? But man, it's so cool. I'll probably give it 5.
Ooh, a 5. Our first 5 for this category. Nice.
Like I said, in the environment direction, like the narrative power between like the art direction as well, like the Luminoth. All you have to do is look at the Luminoth, their culture, how they communicate, all stuff like that. The circular accents, how they connect, it reflects their knuckles and how the fingers connect to them and stuff like that. That's how they use sign language. That's what the little holograms that you scan reflect. It's a constructed language, like the Chozo language in Dread. I can't remember the dev's name, but he went into extreme detail about it, and I think this was on Kiwi Talks interviews as well. And seeing how well just the Luminoth alone is carried out throughout the world, through Temple, Torvus, like, and especially Sanctuary. Like, come on, even in Torvus, the elevator where you come into Torvus, the air filtration system behind the elevator looks scarily like the pauldrons on the Dark Suit. And to have that consistency between even Samus's suits and the world and the Luminoth itself, it's just, and it's so distinct from anything anywhere else in Metroid. Like, they're all somewhat connected, be it like Chozo, Space Pirates, stuff like that. But this Luminoth alone is core to Echoes' identity to me, aesthetically, art-wise, everything. And just how they execute on the Luminoth alone, and they look awesome. Like giant moth people that tower above Samus. It's so cool to see. Again, I have to give that a 5. Just how they execute on it, it's genuinely breathtaking. I've had many long nights just reading about the Luminoth and just how they look and the story they tell. It's just, it's beautiful.
I don't often do this during definitive rankings, but after hearing everyone talk, I think I'm going to change my ranking to a 5 as well. Particularly because of the enemy designs, which I really only talked about the environments in this game. I never really talked about the enemy designs, which are freaking incredible in this game. Not only just the variety of enemies, despite a lot of them being reused from Prime 1, I think they're still able to do some really cool things. Like, the Ing Smashers, for example, are like clearly, evolved from the Elite Pirates in Prime 1, and yet simultaneously they're so
the not she-goths of Torvus Bog.
Yeah, the Grenchlers, my worst nightmare as a kid. They jump now. They jump now.
They shoot lightning. I don't like that.
War Wasps as well, literally the same name, but an ethereal variety. It's so cool.
Yeah, I love, and also, maybe it is my and Doeboy, you mentioned you being in your edgy phase. I'm still in my edgy phase. My PC over here is black and red, just like my Inner Shadow the Hedgehog, and so I'm very big fan of the oh yeah. Yeah, the Year of Shadow, someone would say. But no, like, I'm a very big fan of the dark possessed creatures in Echoes, as they also have the red and black, edgy as hell color scheme as well. The pirates in particular, I love the look of the pirate troopers when they get fully corrupted, and I love. It's kind of more of an animation thing than an art direction. I love when something is getting corrupted in a cutscene. You can actually see it trying to struggle and fight it off, and it's just it's so cool and so morbid, and I love it. So yeah, and also
shout out to Halo 3: The Flood.
Oh yeah. And then Gregory, you also mentioned the dark suit. Of course, I have to mention, if we're talking about suits, we got to mention the light suit, which, granted, my favorite suit, also going with that red and black theme, is of course the Phazon suit, but my number 2 pick is definitely the light suit, which also looks absolutely immaculate.
It's so good.
I wish the
love
gold stayed,
the kneecaps that could poke my eyes out.
Yeah. So vicious.
What'd you say you wish stayed? I interrupted you.
In the introductory cutscene with the light suit, where the lights and the visor are like completely gold, I wish that stayed personally, but I still love how it looks.
All right, absolutely. Yeah, that cutscene, yeah, I definitely agree with that. And there's that one piece of concept art too that actually has it with the gold lights too, which it looks so good.
I gotta look this up. Hold on.
All right, well, while you're looking that up, I'm gonna move on to category number 3, which
that's so cool. Sorry.
Yeah, right. it looks so awesome, right? But yeah, we're gonna go to category 3, which you actually just talked about, Gregory. So I might just throw that back to you, which is gonna be the story of Metroid Prime 2 Echoes. Yeah, so I think I'll just let you start with this one and throw it back to you.
So, this, as Trav pointed out, the conflict between just light and dark and how it's executed. The fact that the Luminoth cherish the light so, like, to an almost like holy level. It's basically their religion, the light of ether.
They are months, so
they absolutely are. And to have it, like, the Ing be their parallel, it's and for like evil to come so close to just quelling the light, and then it to almost mirror Prime 1, where Chozo see this light in the distance and it being Samus. Samus once again does that for the Luminoth. She's the one thing that is like this bright and colored figure in the sea of like lifelessness in Aegon Temple Grounds, and the desperation in the Luminoth to the point that they use child soldiers to carry out important missions, and then they still die. Like the elderly, like the young, they're that desperate, and there were only like some 50 left. And then like Umos is there to defend like these last Luminoth in this one room. Like the Ing were literally on the doorstep to winning. It's a great comeback story, because then when Samus saves everyone, she just waves off, and it's like it's simple but powerful. And then for that to continue on with the Federation then coming in to find Phazon and then use that to then lead into corruption, I don't know, there's something unique about how Echoes tells its story, both through its environment, through like the scan logs, and then the relationship between like Dark Samus and Samus as well. Samus becoming more like the light, as Trav said, and then Dark Samus becoming more desperate and more monstrous later on. It's and for a series that has like relatively simple stories and stuff like that, like Metroid Prime, Samus detects a distress signal and she comes in and investigates. Ridley, go fight him later on, and then you just explore the world. Echoes is similar in how it's a bit more obvious with its story, I'd say. But like, if you want to truly appreciate it, you have to like scan the story, the logs and stuff like that of the troopers, how they fall, and just their sad demise. The Luminoth, how they view the world, and just how distraught and close they got to just be completely wiped out. And then the pirates, who are just trying to figure out what is going on. It's, I don't know, it's a beautiful story to me personally.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just come right off the bat. I'm also gonna give it a 5, despite some critiques that I'm gonna say in a sec. But really, I don't even want to say critiques. It's one singular critique really that I have, and that I think Echoes is a much better story than Prime 1, but I like the way Prime 1 tells its story better, where Prime 1 feels almost like a mystery that's unfolding. You don't really get everything unloaded to you at the beginning. You kind of slowly come to the realization that, you know, the pirates have been mining Phazon, and the Phazon is also this, you know, corruption that, you know, the Chozo had to deal with long ago, and you kind of realize how those two plots are related, and how ultimately, at the end of the day, Metroid Prime is the source of the Phazon, or at least so you think in that game. Echoes, you pretty much get the bulk of it at the beginning. Light versus Dark. Ing killed the Federation. They're about to kill the Luminoth. We need to kill them to save the Luminoth and save the galaxy. We get that pretty much unloaded after the tutorial sequence, but despite that, like you mentioned, there's so much. First off, the story in general, I just feel like is a lot more compelling this time, but also there's so much detail and lore building around those stories, not just in the scan logs, but just in the environmental storytelling that just goes to levels that even, you know, the first Metroid Prime game does. And also, like you mentioned, a big fan of space pirate comedy, and my God, this game has so much of it.
There's so much of it. Yeah.
It's so great. Metroids are not pets. Yeah.
Do you know pirates aren't very like keen on thievery with their boxes? They don't like it when they're stolen.
Yeah, any personnel caught using the what's the training room with like the boxes that go up and down? There's that one scan where like the commander is like lecturing them on like, do not use the training room when not authorized. Like I love it. And then of course the pirates freaking out, like literally pulling a new gunray, going, this is getting out of hand, now there are two of them. So good. So good. So yeah, all in all, still going to give the story a 5, despite that minor critique I have regarding the way it's told. Also, actually, before I hand it off, I also will say Echoes, probably my favorite characterization of Samus to date.
100%.
Okay. I can respect that. I was gonna say Dread, but yeah.
Dread is also very good in a lot of ways. But yeah, Echoes, the thing I love about Echoes that I don't think Dread quite fully captures is Echoes makes Samus a compassionate badass. And to me, like, that to me is my ultimate interpretation of Samus. Dread, she's an absolute badass in that game, but I didn't quite get, you know, that subtle compassionate side of her. And I really like that in 2 and even 3 as well to an extent.
I was gonna say, I think I get that feeling more from 3 personally, but I'm due for a replay of 2 anyway. I did not replay it for this, so maybe I'm wrong.
Her interaction with Exeter, that.
Yeah. Hold on. What was we're talking about story, right?
Yes.
I think that I keep like looking at shiny objects and losing what I'm doing. I have little transformers on my desk.
I'm done saving you.
I'm done saving. I love.
Oh, that was way better than mine.
Oh my gosh! I almost just asked what we were talking about again. I am so out of so I think you took the words right out of my mouth. I prefer how Prime 1's story is told with that mystery, but I won't lie, Prime 2's story is still pretty damn good. I think it is really good, don't get me wrong. I think it's my least favorite execution of story in the Prime trilogy, not counting Hunters. I do prefer how 3 tells its story over 2, and then I just love 1 because I only have nostalgia feelings. but the story they tell, clashing light and dark, it's something that's been done to death, but they still did it in a compelling way. And seeing, the way that I perceived it, of the corrupting nature of Dark Aether almost being a allusion to how bad the Phazon's going to get in the future, I thought was really interesting, and how Dark Samus plays into all that. I'm running out of things to say though, because I for as cool as I think Prime 2 is, I guess I needed to refresh myself a bit more on the story of like more nuanced things. So I'm gonna say for now, with my uneducated opinion, probably a 3 out of 5.
Okay.
There's a lot of things that, because I replayed it. Let's see. I streamed it, and I started streaming in 2018. I want to say around 2019, maybe 2020 is the last time I played it. And I did pay much more attention this time. But I don't know. It's like you get the gist of the story. There's a lot less of a mystery going on. Rather, I guess the mystery is just like what you expect from a gameplay encountering what are you going to encounter next, is the mystery. It's more immediate, less of a grand overarching story in that mystery department. I don't know, I'm using a lot of words to fill time. Yeah, it was cool. I'll pass it to Doughboy.
I think so. First of all, so much has already been said, and I generally agree with a lot of it, so I'm not just gonna repeat stuff. But to me, it sort of felt like, with Metroid Prime 2 in particular, they being the writers for this, saw how successful and cool Halo was, and we're kind of like, can we do that a little bit? And that's where we see, it's certainly not 1-to-1, but it feels a little bit like The Flood. Obviously, this isn't the first time someone's done that comparison, and that to me was overall a good thing to take, if that was something that they took. Because I think Halo 1 was 2001 or 2002, so they had some time to chew on that.
Yeah, 2001. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so I think possibly the inspiration coming from that for the Aang a little bit. Maybe they had already started to storyboard some things, and then somebody on the team played Halo 1 and was like, okay, this is sick. now there's some influence. So I like that. Again, I guess I'm just tapping into the whole edgy spooky thing again. I like the idea of the spooky guys show up and do spooky stuff, and now you're in the spooky world, and yeah, ooh. And so that works for me pretty well. That said, years later, after playing it for the first time, I don't think the story stuck to me in the way that the Prime 1 story stuck. And maybe that's going back to Doom, what you were talking about, like the mystery unfolding component of it, or maybe just like something about your first Metroid Prime experience has an extra impression on you as a player, and that's maybe just what you remember more. But I just wasn't as in love with the story as I was with Prime 1. I think as a kid, I felt like I was engaged with the story of Prime 1. As a kid with the story of Prime 2, I wasn't completely disengaged or anything, but I think I slightly leaned more towards like, ooh, cool bad guy, shoot. Like a smidge more towards that. And then playing it later, the most recent time I played it was 2001. I played through all the Metroid games leading up to Dread.
You mean 2021?
Yep, sorry. The year that ends in a 1.
Yeah.
There's a few of those.
But no, just the one.
You know
But
the
yeah,
one.
I as an adult playing it more and like reading the scans more, I was like, wow, there's so much depth to this that I did not absorb when I was younger. Holy cow. So the plot is there, but and it is good as we've talked about. But yeah, it just didn't have the same sticking power. And someone with a degree in English or something could probably tell me why. But I'm gonna give it a 4. I'm giving lots of 4s today. I'm giving it a 4 because it was good. There were some really cool highlights to it, but I can't give it the 5 that I think Prime 1 probably has.
Yeah, lots of Metroid Prime 4s today. Our favorite kind of 4.
Soon.
I think one other thing, at least for me, as playing it as a kid, is I hadn't 100% in Metroid Prime yet. I'd actually just beaten the game right before, maybe like a month or two before Echoes came out. But I hadn't 100%ed it, so one of the parts that actually was a fair bit of a mystery to me was the role of Dark Samus, who I didn't realize until the end of my playthrough was Metroid Prime. When that final design was very evocative of that, that final boss design, that's when it finally clicked to me. It's like, oh, Metroid Prime took the suit, and that looks like, oh, and that kind of blew my mind as a kid. Now, had I 100%ed it, that would have also been less of a mystery. It's like, okay, well, obviously that's the end of the Prime cutscene. But yeah, coming to that realization was also, like, as a kid, pretty huge for me.
That's fair. I guess I'm not going to change my score, but I do think that the mystery around Dark Samus was definitely the part that I latched onto as a kid, mostly because I'd already played a bit of Prime 3 at that point, or maybe I watched someone play it, so I knew that Dark Samus comes back. And so I'm like, oh, I want to know more about them. This is the game that they're from, kind of. Cool. I want to know more about that. I want to know why at the very end Dark Samus tries to poke Samus's chest right before going.
She was trying to do a boop. That's why.
Yeah.
We have a speck of dust right here. Bye.
Right before Dark Samus goes out, does the thing where you flick up to her nose.
Oh yeah.
I wish.
Yeah, YOLO, and then vanishes. So our next category here, and I think I'm gonna try to move up the pacing, if you will, which is very convenient for this next category, which is the pacing and progression of Metroid Prime 2 Echoes. Again, I think I'm gonna hand it off to Doeboy this time, because I think I'm still working on my thoughts at the moment. Yeah. Unless you want to also hand it off to someone.
I'll hand it off to myself.
Okay.
I think this is probably, looking at the list of the categories here, I'm pretty sure we would all agree that, if there is a weakness of the game that is that kind of everyone is aware of, it is the pacing, because there's kind of the extra backtracking, and as we've talked about, much of the world looks the same, so it doesn't quite feel like it's the backtracking wasn't as bad as I remembered it being when I played it the second time around. Maybe it's just a little more patient, but I'm pretty sure, just through the years of talking to people who play Metroid and kind of lining up with my own experience, it just the pacing of the gameplay, at least, feels a little slow. Not always, but it didn't, in my brain, the impression that it has left on me is that the game... I just heard my cat meow. Sorry, I got distracted.
Very good thing to get distracted over. It's okay.
Yeah, it's good content still, but yeah, it just doesn't have the same. It doesn't have the pacing that makes you feel like there's always that there might be something like around the corner at any point. Not that there has to be. You know, obviously we're doing a lot of comparisons with Prime 1 here. Just it's right there, makes sense too. Prime certainly had backtracking. Prime certainly didn't have wasn't action packed every single room that you went into, but I think with Prime 2 it just felt like there wasn't enough surprises or big moments as sprinkled in as maybe you wanted to. I don't know. I hope that makes some sense. So for me, I feel like the pacing is a 3.
A 3.
It's not bad. It's above a 2.5, which would be like the 50% mark. But yeah, it just I don't think I can't wait to play Prime 2 because it's so action packed constantly and it's always so dopamine inducing. Which doesn't mean that's not necessarily a hallmark of a good game. It doesn't have to be the constant dopamine induction. But just looking at this, narrowing in on this one thing, I don't think pacing is a strength of Prime 2.
I think I agree, if you don't mind me jumping in.
Go for it.
So as a kid, I hated it. I really did not like it, and my brain saw going through new areas of the dark world the same as just backtracking through areas I'd already been. My brain didn't make that connection of these being new areas to figure out puzzles in. And so you get to that the puzzle where you have to spin the bridge in Torvis by going in and out of the dark world, and I'm just like, this is the worst. I cannot do this. Yeah, I was a Metroid fan who didn't like backtracking back then. That's crazy. I love it now. I genuinely love it now. But it was one of those things, I guess this is a common thing with everything I'm talking about tonight, is just it took me a while to appreciate as a human being. So, I mean, yeah, it grew on me. I still don't think it's as great. I'm sure I could route things out better now and figure it out. But I don't think the pacing is as good as Prime 1, and I haven't played Prime 3 for a hot minute, so I can't say there. I think I'm agree with Doeboy. I'm going to give it a 3 out of 10. Oh, sorry, 5. 3 out of 5.
So, having just played through it, again, the thing that I realized, you can't get the Sky Temple keys before you get the Dark Visor.
Yeah.
That is the biggest blunder of Echoes to me, because you can collect the Chozo keys whenever you want, provided you have the right item. So, for example, the Chozo Temple key at the start of Magmort, you can get that immediately.
That's when I was.
And yeah, so, and the fact that you're halfway through the game and you can only then start to collect the temple keys, and even then it's not really advisable to start backtracking until you get the power bombs, for example. It kind of makes me commit the one sin of playing through Metro games where I just don't feel like backtracking until I've just got everything. And it's very rare for a Metroid game for me to make me feel like that. I don't get that with Prime. I don't even get that with Corruption. But Echoes, that it is the one blunder for me. And yeah, and especially how I appreciate that there's elevators connected to every region. That is definitely a big plus compared to having to go through Magmor every time you want to go to Phendrana and back. But the timings when you get an upgrade to then go to Aegon, for example, that's not where you need to go. You need to come back out and then go to the temple and then come back if you want to backtrack. It's just not advisable. It definitely, as Doeboy said, has pacing issues. And because of the progression, it also makes me not want to replay it as much, which is one of the pillars of Metroid to me, to be replayable. So I'm going to give it a 2.
Whoa, a 2.
Yeah.
Bold.
While you're in
Bold and brash.
Belongs in the trash. No, that was-
I don't know if it belongs in the trap. Yeah, one of my least favorite things in games now, I don't think I minded as much as a kid, but one of my least favorite things in games now is when you see a puzzle, you like take a second or two, you understand what you need to do, and then it's like, oh, here comes the next like 15 minutes of execution just to go do this thing that I already get. And you were talking about, Trav, the room where you have to spin the bridge spinning room. I don't even remember the exact puzzle. I just remember, yeah, you have to go in and out, back and forth, and it's kind of a nuisance when you know how to solve it already, and it's just like, man,
Yeah.
like I wish I could like hit a macro and let it run and go get a snack or something. Like I don't
Yeah.
need to do this. I don't. Why am I forced to press the buttons? Like it's not interesting anymore. I already.
I felt that in Sanctuary.
Yeah. And that's different than you already know the puzzle because you've played it a few times. It's just like pure ad nauseum execution, which Metroid is fun. It can still be fun to move around and stuff, but yeah, there's a moderate amount of that in Prime 2 as well.
Yeah, so Gregory, I'm glad you brought up the Sky Temple keys because I was about to do it if no one else did. And honestly, I can't remember, it was either Trav or Doe, one of you guys mentioned like it can be better when, you know, if you know how to do the run, if you know how to optimize it, which I agree with. And I don't mind the Sky Temple keys myself because I've optimized the run, but I feel like that's going to be true of every single Metroid game. You know, if you know how to optimize the run, it's going to become a lot less stressful. And so I don't really use that in my critique, but yeah, the Sky Temple keys in this game is just awful. Especially on a first time playthrough if you're not using a guide. And I get to a degree why they did it. You know, it's kind of padding like the artifact keys were in Prime, which I defend the Prime 1 artifacts. I actually do really enjoy that hunt. I think the Sky Temple keys, it tries to go for something similar, but I think it just comes off as more annoying and less of like the power trip that the artifacts gave me, at least, where, you know, the artifacts, it's like, hey, you know what, here's, you know, you're at your full power and you get to traverse the whole map and, you know, get all these cool expansions and energy tanks and whatnot. And you get to do it in like this, you know, awesome looking suit. Same thing in Prime 2, you know, you're recollecting these expansions, you're in the light suit, but, you know, there's this additional step that not only do you have to figure out where the keys are located, but then you have to go to its dark ether counterpart to find the keys. And like you mentioned, that you cannot collect a single one of these until you get the dark visor. And even then, if you want to talk about an optimal route, you're probably not going to collect that first Sky Temple key until like the end of the game anyways, if you're doing, you know, assuming you're doing a no major glitches run. And so, and then again, that's like maybe 1 or 2 keys at the absolute most. And so that's definitely a huge hit on it. Aside from those Sky Temple keys, though, I actually think Echoes is a pretty decently paced games. The only critique I have really against it is some of those loading times, especially transitioning back and forth from the light and dark world. I feel like that's probably the biggest hit to the progression, to the pacing itself. But, you know, the actual maneuvering of going to and from the environments, I actually really like how it's done, and I don't really know how they could have done a better job at it with the light and dark world mechanic specifically, because I've talked about this on the podcast, but my favorite type of Metroid exploration is what I like to call road trip style exploration. You know, it's that kind of Super Metroid Prime style, you know, where if you've never played the game before, the next item, the next objective could literally be anywhere. I'm spending a lot of time in this area, maybe I have to go to a completely different area, and then I get slingshot into a new area, and you're kind of just going all over the place. It's a road trip. Whereas Echoes has what I like to call the Zelda dungeon formula, where you're spending a lot of time in one area, you're completing one objective, you're facing a temple boss at the end, quite literally, and then you move on to the next area. Maybe occasionally you'll get a backtracking section here and there, but for the most part, you're staying in this area. And I think this was the right direction to go with Echoes because of that light and dark world mechanic. I think it would have been an absolute nightmare to pull off that traditional style Metroid exploration with the light and dark world layered on top. So I think this is the best way to handle it, and I mostly like it, again, except for those loading times. But man, those Sky Temple keys on a first-time playthrough, it really is just a vibe killer. It does not give you that, at least for me. I know a lot of people also don't like the artifact hunt, and if you didn't like the artifact hunt, you will despise the Sky Temple keys. And so all of that together, to sum it all up, I am also going to give the pacing and progression a 3 myself.
All right.
I'm sorry, Echoes, my beloved.
We had to do it to him. Let's go to another related topic, though. We're at about the halfway point in our rankings now. The gameplay and the quote-unquote gimmick. And, we've been talking about the light and dark world a lot, which obviously is the central echoes of gimmick, but there's another one that I don't think we've brought up once, and that's the ammo system, specifically the beam ammo system in Echoes. Obviously, Metroid has pretty much always had ammo in the form of missiles, and you got power bombs that were introduced in Super. But yeah, Echoes is the first time that your traditional beams have ammunition tied to them, and a lot of people are very mixed on beam ammo. Some people hate it, and some people are... Not only do some people hate it, even in one of the recent Kiwi Talks interviews, he was interviewing Jack Matthews and Zoid Kirsch, and even they were not fans of the beam ammo implementation. Oh, wow. Yeah, very, very interesting interview. Definitely recommend everyone check that out. I am someone who does absolutely love the beam ammo system. I totally understand why it's not for everyone, though. I wouldn't want it to become something that's a mainstay for Metroid, but Echoes is such this weird, unique game that's in its own bubble, and so I kind of like it for being bold enough to, to try out this ammo system, and I think it really works because of, its mechanic where you defeat enemies and crates with the dark beam, you get light beam ammo, and vice versa. You defeat them with the light beam, you get dark beam ammo. And there's this really fun, I wouldn't really call it a survival horror, but there's this extra element of you like keeping track of your reserves, but it's also not to such an annoying degree that you always feel like you're out of ammo. Like if you're about to run out of ammo, it's like, oh, I just need to use my dark beam in a few places I wasn't going to, and it kind of forces you to try out your entire kit. And I especially like that because there are some conventions where beams work where you otherwise wouldn't expect them to, and kind of doing this almost forces you to try different combinations you normally wouldn't. For example, I think the enemy that most people absolutely despise in this game is the Dark Pirate Commandos. They're kind of the Chozo ghosts of this game. Nobody likes them, and it's like, oh my gosh, I don't even fight these things. I just wait for them to disappear so I can leave the room. Well, actually, if you use the dark beam on them, which, you'd expect to use the light beam, but if you use the dark beam on them, you can actually freeze them and then blow them up with a missile, just like you would with an ice beam. And there's plenty of other enemies, with the light and dark beam that would work on enemies you wouldn't expect because of, their other properties that they have. And at least for me, I feel like it's that ammo system that really forced me to experiment with a lot of that by forcing me to use certain beams in situations I wasn't planning to otherwise. And so I really like it. And then the one thing where I do think it fails, though, is the Annihilator Beam. The Annihilator Beam, I don't think the ammo system works really well for that. Like, getting the super crystals is awesome, and it comes in real handy during the final phase of the Emperor Ing fight. But otherwise, I just kind of don't touch it. And for a beam called the Annihilator Beam, that's really lame. I'm not gonna lie. That's actually really lame. Yeah, those are my thoughts on the. Oh, sorry, go.
No, that was just more of like a because I feel the complete opposite. I'll let you give your ranking before I jump into it.
I definitely want to hear your opinions then. I'm very curious. But But yeah, those are just the beams. There's obviously a ton of other items as well. The Echo Visor, my God, I wish this visor was used more in the game. It looks so awesome. This might be like one of my I think aside from the Command Visor in Prime 3 might be my favorite visor in the whole series. It looks so awesome. The sound design, I mean, it's literally a visor that sees sound, and the sound design that's paired with it is just like it still sounds incredible to this day. I'm using the word sound a lot, I just realized. But yeah, I absolutely love it. You use it in 2 out of the 3 Dark Samus fights, so I think that's a pretty big W if you ask me. The boost ball and spider ball aren't new to this game, and me and Andy talked about this a few episodes ago during our actual like retrospective episode, but like in this game they were like, hey, why don't we just put them together? And they ended up creating some of the coolest, sickest spider ball puzzles on the planet by just combining these 2 abilities together, especially in Sanctuary Fortress. There's a couple of just absolutely gnarly puzzles where you're just shooting over, these endless gaps and, riding these mechanical discs, to get expansions. I absolutely love what they did. And then just the fact that they were able to make the screw attack work. Obviously, it's not quite, it's not the indestructible, one-hit kill that it was in like the 2D games, but like the fact that they were able to find a way to adapt it, with the incredible camera work, that Retro put in there, like I'm really impressed with the screw attack despite its limitations in this game. And so I think all in all, I'm going to give the items in this game a 4.
Okay.
Nice.
I can take it. Or Trav.
Yeah, no, please do. Actually, I have more thoughts I need to think of.
Yeah, I'm gonna just open with, I agree with the 4. I'm also gonna give it a 4. It's Prime 2, so if you played Prime 1 and you didn't hate it, you're probably fine here. Screw attack was obviously a little clunky. I wish it had been something that was a little faster paced, like you moved faster with it. Like sometimes there's the big gaps and you're going like it just kind of takes a while. Watching the camera when you're bouncing through like a a tall room when you gotta climb up with the bouncing back and forth, it's kind of just like, here we go again. It just feels a little slow. Like I wish it doesn't necessarily need to climb higher, but if it had been faster paced a little bit more, it might have felt a little bit more like the screw attack we know and love from 2D games. And it's not like that practical for combat. Like you can kind of use it, but it'd probably just be easier to shoot something. So I agree you have to adapt it for this format of a game, but it wasn't the screw attack that you like connect with in 2D games more, and way less impactful as something to get outside of, oh good, now I can climb. Like it was more of a way to traverse things than something that was useful for combat, which maybe is okay, but it just when you go to use it, like if you're like, oh yeah, screw attack, this is awesome, and then it's like, what, this is not exactly what I expected. So I'm gonna compare myself to a friend I have who is a very different type of gamer. I am someone, when I'm playing a game, I'm always like kind of micromanaging any systems I have. So whether that's ammo or health or mana or like whatever it is, like I'm always trying to stay on top of it, keep things up to date, keep things like maxed out as much as I can, almost to a fault, because then I don't use things enough. I'm that type of player. I know other people who basically just like to hold W down, and they'll use everything up and kill stuff really quickly, and then they run out of ammo and they get pissed off. They're like, this game sucks. I ran out of ammo. I'm not playing this game anymore. I don't want to have to go back to shoot one thing to get ammo to open a door. Just turning it off. So it really depends on what type of gamer you are, and I feel like Prime 1 pushed the limits of the Metroid fan base a little bit at the time, because it was already, now we're doing 3D. This maybe feels a little weird. It's slower pace compared to Super Metroid. This is a little weird. But you also had to... I just lost my train of thought.
You're playing Prime 1, it's a bit slower than Super Metroid.
Yeah. Okay, right. But you didn't have to really micromanage. You're not micromanaging ammo. You might have to once in a while go back. You're like, oh, I'm out of missiles. And you have to get some ammo there. But I think Prime 2 like pushed that limit even further. So if someone didn't like Prime 1, they're almost definitely not going to like Prime 2 because it like exaggerates some of those elements more. If you like that stuff, then cool. You're in for more of the almost slightly dipping into like more RPG where you have other things you have to manage with the ammo system. But I play that way. I think Metroid games influence me to play that way, honestly. Where I'm the one who scans everything. I'm looking around a lot. Other people just want to mash keys, and that they get the thrill of that type of gameplay. So for gameplay, for me, it lands as a 4, but I think for a lot of people, it might land as a 3, maybe even a 2. So
yeah, I think that's totally fair.
But I think it depends on who you ask pretty strongly.
Yeah, that's fair. I guess I'll jump in. So yeah. I think that I guess I'll start with the ammo thing. I don't like it very much. It did grow on me, but I'm not too fond of it because, like, yeah, there's the benefit of it not inspiring, forcing you to actually use these beams on enemies, whereas in Prime 1 you could probably get away with using the power beam for everything except for enemies that require other beams, like the beam troopers, until you run into like doors or puzzles that need those beams. This is forcing you to actually engage with enemies with these new weapons, something I praised games like Doom Eternal for. But in terms of getting that ammo back, that's where I have an issue, because less of an issue, more just I guess an indifference towards, because all you do is, like, yeah, it's easy to get ammo back for what you need. You just use the other beam. And I felt like that's so simple that it kind of feels like it didn't have to be a thing. Like it's a little, it's not deep enough, I think, is how I feel. And maybe that's a good thing, that my feeling is like I want them to go deeper with this mechanic. But I do think that it comes around once you get the Annihilator beam, because I actually really like the Annihilator beam. I love using it. And I feel like at that point, like, okay, that resource management part of my brain kicks in, that I'm like, okay, fine, I'll swap to the light beam so I can fill up on dark. I'll fill up on dark by swapping to the light beam. And then now I have this Annihilator cannon, this thing that looks like static TV in my arm, just like starts firing out. And then I get the sonic boom and I just start having fun with it. And so, like, there is a point where I really like the ammo system. It just takes a while to get there. As for the other items, I think that you guys said everything that really could be said. I like the screw attack. I like the wall jumping. I do agree that, you know, it does get a little tedious because it is effectively just a cutscene for wall jumping that you have to make sure you press the button for, which is like,
right.
All right,
and then
you turn
easy
wall
to mess
jumping
up
into
too, and then you fall off, and you're like,
oh really? I would just mash it and I'd be fine.
I guess that works. I'm there trying to be precision, but yeah.
I mean, that's fair. I mean, you had to do that in the 2D game, so like
I probably should have just mashed it right. But.
Yeah, I mean, like I get where you're coming from, because you could kind of get away with that in well, not get away with it, but like, you know, that's how they trained you to do it in the 2D games. But everything else I think is really cool. I love the visors, the Echo visor, the Dark visor. I don't like the weapon expansions. I think that just kind of felt like weird padding. Maybe not as much now that I care about the weapon ammo system a bit more. Like, there's a point where I care about it, but I'm just like, oh, okay, fine, I'll just go collect these so I have more ammo usage. The Seeker missiles were cool. Is that the right term? Seeker missiles, the
Yeah.
Yes.
lock on 5 burst. Yeah, because I remember they had like a different name in Dread, though I guess it was a technically different item. Really everything, like they have everything basically from Prime 1 minus the visors, and even then, you know, the dark beam kind of has the same functionality as the X-ray visor, while looking kind of like the thermal visor. You know, everything's there. I love the new added visual flair to the boost ball. And I don't know. I feel like saying that I don't like Prime 2's items beyond the beams is really just like, I don't like more things, and I like more things. So I'm very happy with how Prime 2 handled it. All right, Gregory, did you go yet?
I have not.
What was your ranking? What was your ranking first?
Oh, I was hoping you wouldn't ask me. No, I forgot. I'll say 4. I'll say 4.
4? Okay.
Respectable. I think the beam, like the ammo system, is a non-issue, mostly because I ran out of ammo one time in my recent playthrough, and that's because I was using the beam combos for the dark beam. And then there are ammo like stations everywhere, and several times I was like, I don't need them. But I want to cover something that surprised me and that no one has like mentioned: the performance. It doesn't run as well as I remember. There are several times where the game just chugs. And I don't know if it's because I'm running the PAL version or whatever, but there was one particular time where I just could not open a door. Like, the door just didn't open. I even left and came back. It wouldn't open. I had to quit and restart the game. And, like, I had to go, that was the door I had to go through. That's the only time something like that has happened to me in a Metroid game. The portals as well, it really chugged at one point. And it happened more in Sanctuary than anywhere else. It was just really weird. Yeah, like with the res bits as well, if that's their name, like just the particle effects everywhere, it just chugged the game. It's really weird considering how well Prime runs.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it still runs like great most of the time, but when it chugs, it chugged.
I'll probably notice it more now that you mentioned it, but I don't remember that at all.
Yeah, I didn't remember either. Like, and especially because I'm so used to like playing it on my computer and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I never ran into something like that, and then just playing it on the GameCube version, I don't think it even happened in Trilogy. So like that's why it caught me by surprise.
Was Trilogy.
Yeah, that's where I spent the most time with Prime 2, which is probably why I'm not remembering.
Yeah, same.
Interesting.
Yeah,
So,
I played
like that really took me by surprise.
Yeah, so my most recent playthrough was on Dolphin, but the year before I also played Prime 3 on Dolphin. And one thing that surprised me about Prime 3 was that I always remember Prime 3's loading times to be absolutely abysmal. But when I was playing on Dolphin, the doors would like open up like instantly, like almost every time. And I figured like, oh, that's just my SSD. So that's, just make it easier. Playing Prime 2 on Dolphin, not the same experience. Those doors took forever to load in ways that like I don't even remember. And so I do wonder if that was just like a fix that Prime Trilogy was able to give to Prime 2. I also do just in general remember, I didn't get this on my Dolphin playthrough, but I do remember the Emperor Ing fight, the second phase where you're spider balling all over. I do remember that phase chugging quite a bit, like especially with all the smoke effects.
And even the menu navigation, like coming in and out of the map, and like the pause menu, like that, it took like a second or two. Yeah, it took a second or two to like resume the game.
Yeah,
it felt really weird. It was really jarring considering how well Prime runs. But so I'll give it a 4 because it's like the complaints people have, like strictly to the gameplay, like it's Prime but with a different spin on it, and the complaints I don't really see them. Like in practice anyway. And as mentioned, just the dark beam into missile combo works a treat.
All right, so Do, you just messaged me that you have to go in about 20 minutes, so I'm going to try to speed up the next few categories.
Dude, don't leak his DMs.
No, we just agreed not to dox anyone. It's all good.
Oh, okay. That's fine then.
Yeah. But no, I also did decide just to combine the gameplay and the items just because I think they're close enough together. I think our ratings would be pretty much the same. Yeah, so I just gave everyone a 4 for both of those. And that gives us with 4 more categories. We'll try to limit it to 5 minutes or less on each if we can, but but yeah, next category up is the areas, and I'll make this one real short because I talked about the areas mostly at the beginning with the atmosphere. I really like them, but Sanctuary Fortress is literally the greatest thing ever. Everything comes together perfectly. I also do love the arena that you fight the Emperor Ing in. I am going to give the areas an Echo. You know what? I'll give it a 5 just because of Sanctuary Fortress. I am actually going to let Sanctuary carry it that high for this one.
Fair enough.
I need a minute to think.
No worries.
Yeah.
Gregory, why don't you go? Because I keep stealing it.
So Torvus Bog, my beloved. When like the introductory like cutscene for it and then music swelling in, like as Doom mentioned with Sanctuary, like I had that for Fendrana. I also had it with Torvus. Like it's not the only like tropical forest swampy area in the franchise, but I think, like I mentioned with the story, how it displays it and how it presents itself, it's divine. Like combined with the music as well, the unique like the flora, fauna. It's probably one of, if not my favorite areas in all of Metroid. And so for like Temple Grounds and Aegon, as mentioned earlier, they like objectively are like quite bland. Like sure for a reason, but they are still bland at the end of the day. So I'll also say 4, but Torvus and Sanctuary, like they're just divine pieces of art, really.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Doeboy, do you need more time?
I'm going to give it a 3.
Interesting.
And I, with the notion of 3, also means it is distinctly not bad.
Yeah, it's still above average.
Right. It's not. It just, when I think of I'm kind of like tapping into my feelings here, I guess, but which a room of Metroid fans, that probably doesn't happen a whole lot. When the feelings I get when I think about Prime 2 are much more about the enemies, is much more about the gameplay. I'm not as married to like I want to revisit this area type of a thing. I will say Sanctuary Fortress definitely stands out as the exception to that. I think Torvus is a great area, but for me it's the music primarily pushing that.
Oh yeah.
And so yeah, it's like it does the job. It's not bad. I'm giving it a 3.
Okay. I think that I loved exploring Prime 2. So even like ignoring the art design, which we already talked about, I really like the map design. I think that the game is laid out, at least at a geometry level, very well. I really liked it. I love how everything is kind of in a way connected to the temple grounds. I think that having that kind of hub, like Talon Overworld kind of had that, but not nearly to that degree, and it wasn't that streamlined. I think that exploring the worlds, especially Sanctuary, just because it's so freaking cool, was huge. Like it made a much larger impression on me than Prime 1 did. So I think I'll give it a 5.
A 5, all right. All right, and then we got 3 categories remaining. Next up is Enemies and bosses. This is another easy 5 for me. I love the bosses alone in Echoes are like some of my favorites in the series. Up until Metroid Dread, I would have said no contest. Echoes has the best bosses, but Dread I actually think gives it some fairly stiff competition. But I mean, Echo still has my all-time favorite boss as Quadraxis. Just in which for those who missed our boss ranking, that dastardly Andy Spiteri did not let me put him rightfully at number 1. He got to number 2, which I think is cruel and unusual punishment personally. But I'll let
who
that.
was number 1?
I believe Dark Samus. Yes, Dark Samus 2 specifically was number 1, which also a fantastic boss fight. But
I can.
But yeah. But yeah.
But yeah.
Not as cool
Yeah.
as Quadraxis. That's crazy.
Yeah, right. Yeah, please tell.
Blew my mind.
Yeah, literally, I replayed Echoes, and the first thing that I was thinking of is like, okay, obviously I'm still gonna enjoy Quadraxis, but like, this was 20 years ago. How well does this hold up? It holds up so well. Oh my god, it's such an incredible fight to this day. Like I still got goosebumps fighting that thing, and just I love the way you literally destroy it by slowly disassembling it, and then on top of that, there's so much cool like tech, like the screw attack in the second phase. You can use it to instantly take out its antenna instead of shooting at it for ages. In the first phase, it's you can one hit.
Speedrun of that, Gregory. It's fascinating the little tricks you can do.
Yeah,
I've never seen an Echo speedrun. I should do that.
And then
Wild.
in the first phase, it'll try to like move its legs out of the way to so that you can't shoot it. But if you stand in front of its leg, it'll try to do its crushing attack, and so you can actually, if you're good enough, you can bait it into its crushing attack, dodge at the last minute, and then fire a super missile. Oh, it's such a fun fight to optimize. I absolutely love it. But yeah, I'm gonna stop talking now. It's a 5. Quadraxis is amazing, and many of the other fights in this game and enemies are as well.
I am going to. Prime 2 has some extremely high peaks. When I replayed it a few years ago, I didn't enjoy the Quadraxis fight as much as I remembered I did as a kid. I think partially because the surprise and mystery of it wasn't there. Like you don't. I knew it was coming up, and so the shock of seeing this gigantic thing as a kid was like really like blew my mind. Probably like big goosebumps moment type of a thing. So knowing it was there, I was still very excited to see it, but didn't have the same impact then, which is fine. But then the gameplay to me felt a little bit like, kind of going back to what I was saying. It's like when you know how to do something and you just need to solve the puzzle. I don't feel like the Quadraxis fight is like. It feels a little bit more like you're solving this giant puzzle that's trying to attack you, which sounds really cool. Not necessarily hating that idea, but it's kind of a slower fight where you're just like, okay, I'm just waiting for the moment to do the thing.
That's fair.
I felt a little bit of that on the second playthrough, but. I had Quadraxis as my wallpaper for a very long time. I love Quadraxis. And I think the only other negative point to take away is even for my... I guess I'm just an edgelord now. Even for that part of my brain, so many of the various Ing boss are just... It's a different mechanic and different thing you're leaning into when you're fighting them, but Ing all more or less look like Ing.
Yeah.
And so there's a little bit of repetitive nature to what you're fighting or like what you're looking at. Quadraxis being the glaring standout, certainly. So very good overall, but not nearly as dynamic as, let's say, Prime 1. There's so many different weird things that you're fighting, whereas Prime 2 is like, here's this Ing, here's that Ing, here's this other Ing, here's a giant robot, here's another big Ing. You do fight Dark Samus a few times, but just less dynamics to that, and so the enemy design kind of the same thing. Some really interesting tidbits, some being a callback to Prime 1 or even other Metroid games. but I will overall land with a 4.
A 4? I think it's a fair score for that.
Mm-hmm.
It's my turn. Okay. So I think the enemies themselves, before getting into bosses, because the bosses are awesome and that's where most of my praise is going to go. I think that the enemies in general, there's not much too special about them. But I love, what's the word? I guess how a lot of the dark variants of enemies are introduced to you, either through cutscenes or through real-time gameplay. You're seeing them get corrupted, usually as a first-time introduction to them. I don't think that there's an enemy you encounter where like later you see the normal variant and then it gets corrupted and you're like, oh, that was that thing. I want to say that exists somewhere though, because I feel like I have some kind of memory of that. But I remember like even that first cutscene where you're in the temple grounds and you get the blue orb, like just that cutscene of like that hopper enemy getting corrupted. It was just like, oh, okay, why was this game called Corrupted? So but then you get to the bosses, and suddenly my score goes from what would have been like I don't know, a 3 to at least a 4. Yeah, of course, Quadraxis was awesome. You guys basically said everything that could be said about that, except for how freaking cool it was when you're spider-balling on its head. That was so cool as a kid. But like all of these bosses, like yeah, I think you made a good point. I think it was Doeboy that said it. Like how in Prime 1 you're fighting just a lot of like things. You know, these are things in their own natural habitat, and you're just kind of going in and killing them. And it's like, okay, that's cool. You're still doing that in this game, but the world feels deliberately hostile in a way that you really only felt in Prime 1 with like Flag Rub, maybe, other than Space Pirates. So like there's one boss, Gregory might have to refresh my memory because I don't remember its name. It's the butterfly dragonfly looking thing. Chica, yeah, like that boss blew my mind as a kid. Also, just like the way that it's told, it's probably not as impressive as I'm about to let on, but like the boss getting corrupted midway through the fight, I was just like, oh.
I'm glad you brought that back up. If I can do 4.5, Chica.
No decimals, no fractions. Yeah.
Okay, all right. I'll stick with the 4. But
like
still close. It's closer to 5.
Probably running out of time, but man, like just the way that everything is introduced to you and shown to you, and then fitting into that corrupting dark aether phazon idea is just, it's communicated so well just through the enemies and boss design. And I don't like the Powerbomb Guardian, but that's it.
Yeah, I'm kind of mid on the Powerbomb Guardian, though. You can watch the boss ranking for Andy and I's full thoughts on that.
Yeah. Everyone's been talking very positively, so I'll jump in with the negative.
Let's go.
I hate the Spider Guardian so much. And exclusively in the GameCube version, the physics and the controls, you feel the lack of the spring ball, don't you? It's like,
and
I feel like
the lack of a save station anywhere nearby too.
Yeah, I forgot that there wasn't one. I feel like people overhate the Boost Guardian a little bit, because that's one of the few areas where you kind of do naturally backtrack and then come back with like a lot more health, a lot more ammo and stuff like that.
Sure.
So I feel like the Boost Guardian isn't as bad as people make it out to be. But yeah, the Spider Guardian, it's one of the few genuinely frustrating Metroid bosses, in my opinion.
That's fair. I completely forgot about that thing.
Yeah, just for that, it has to be a 4 at the very most for me.
That's fair.
And as Doughboy said earlier, like a lot of the bosses are repetitive because it's ing, sandcrawler, ing, other boss. Yeah, it's a 4 Quadraxis peak, Chica peak, and then fighting Dark Samus as you on a timer after the Emperor ing amazing music on the first phase.
Immaculate.
Like incredible. But the Spider Guardian alone, yeah, it has to be a 4 at a maximum for me.
Yeah, I remember you posting that on Twitter, and I was like, I don't agree, but I get it. I can't blame you.
Yeah.
All right, so we got 2 more categories left. We're gonna do expansions and power-ups next. There's a number of ways, because in Metroid Prime, you got missiles, you get your E-tanks. That doesn't really change in Echoes, other than the beam ammo expansions. This is more talking about the actual puzzles you have to solve to actually get those expansions. That's kind of what this category is about, and I'm going to give it a 5. I think Echoes has some of the best puzzles in the series. Again, a lot of that is the, I talked about the Spider Ball Boost Ball combo earlier. I really love, especially in that end game, there's so many cool puzzles with how that handles. And there are some down moments, I think Doe, you were talking about Sanctuary Fortress earlier. I'm definitely not a fan of the color matching puzzles. That's just kind of why is this in my Metroid game? But yeah, so there's a couple of down points, but for the most part, I think the puzzles are really strong, and I generally just have a lot of fun getting most of these expansions. So I'm gonna give it a 5.
Okay.
I think generally same notion for me. The puzzles felt like they got overall more involved compared to Prime 1, and I enjoy that. That might not be for everybody, but I personally like a nice thick puzzle to work through. I'll give it a 5. I'll give it a 5.
All right.
Game made me think. 5. Brain on, the one brain cell.
I suddenly am cognizant of the world around me.
my smooth brain developed one ridge.
Yeah, the wrinkle showed up.
Let's see. That means it's my turn. Freak. Let's see. Whenever I think of puzzles in Prime 2, I think of the color puzzles in Sanctuary where you have to shoot the dot and it rotates the 4. Hated it as a kid, love it now because I just play games like that on my phone casually. I don't know what it did. It's just oh wait, hold on, I have to think about this, and I like thinking now. This is awesome. I love the puzzles for the most part. There's things that I used to consider puzzles that I don't anymore, which was just getting the Sanctuary keys at the end of just gotta go walk around with the dark visor on, look for these weird jellyfish things that aren't Metroids. Oh man, I didn't even talk about the dark Metroids. Those were amazing to me as a kid. I thought those were so cool. Anyway,
those are sick. Anyways, go on.
I love that you could find one in Prime 3 that's being dissected.
Yeah.
Yes, that's so awesome.
But what the heck was I talking about?
You were talking about puzzles, yeah.
Right. Other than that, I don't remember a lot, which probably means I didn't get stuck on a lot, which is, I think, a good thing. Yeah, 5 out of 5.
All right.
I'm gonna be a bit of a negative Nancy. I don't think the puzzles in the majority of Metro games that people think of are puzzles. Because to me, the puzzle is so that there's a path ahead. I need an upgrade for that. How do I get that? Rather than the color puzzle in Sanctuary. It's having played through Resident Evil and Silent Hill. Those games have made me realize sort of true puzzles in a way, where you have this item, you have to come back, and you use that for something else, and that will unlock something else for you, and then you come back, and then that will let you progress. That's why I say the power-ups are more the puzzle rather than something like the color puzzle in Sanctuary. When that's used effectively, it's incredible and it feels really satisfying. But to one that stands out to me in Prime 1, for example, the scanning the runes and stuff like that. Is that a puzzle? I feel like it comes across that way, but you're looking. That's it. It's not really a puzzle.
You're not really thinking.
yeah, like to pull an Egoraptor, is that a puzzle? Like, it's not to me. But when it is used like effectively, where it shows you what the next upgrade is, like as a door, or when you get the gravity boost, you're literally looking at a spider ball track. It's like, okay, that's the next item I need to get. Where do I get that? And I think it does that twice with the power bomb as well. So when it's used like that effectively, I'd say it's about a 4.
A 4. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, and then we got one more category. We'll try to wrap this one up real quick. Spoiler alert, I released a nearly 30-minute video on the music of Echoes. It's an easy 5 for me. It's not just my all-time favorite Metroid soundtrack. It's one of my favorite soundtracks of all time. If you want to hear even more detailed thoughts on it, please, by all means, watch the video. Shameless plug. I understand why a lot of people don't like it. It doesn't quite have a lot of those same melodic contours that the first Prime game does. It's definitely a lot more atmospheric. It doesn't emphasize melody and meter much. It actually reminds me, specifically with the Dark Ether tunes, it reminds me a lot of Metroid 2 on the Game Boy in a way. A lot of that music is handled. That being said, I still really like those more atmospheric tracks, and I think that when they are contrasted with those, more typically melodic Metroid tracks, it's a really nice combo. And my God, there's just some absolute bangers here. I mean, Gregor, you already mentioned the Escape theme and the first Emperor Ing theme, just absolutely incredible. The credits theme is my single favorite piece of Metroid music ever written. I love the Echoes. I love the Echoes credits to death. The mini boss theme is like low key kind of goated. I love that. The Dark Troopers theme is really creepy. I love the way that the bass is like hammering on these rapid 16th notes. Anyways, watch the video for more. 5. It's y'all's turn now.
It's in my history. I will watch it.
I'm immediately going to jump in because music is one of my hyper fixations with this kind of stuff. I adore the music of Prime 2, and I think that it might have my favorite Metroid soundtrack, at least for the Prime games. I'd have to think harder about that to be more definitive, but just on the surface, like it was one of the first games that I owned that I would literally just sit on the title screen and listen to the music. I
Same.
love that title screen music. When I was a kid, I discovered or played Prime 2 around the time that this is going to sound really cringe, around that This Is Sparta meme came around. And every time I would hear it, like that synthesized voice, I kept thinking that was going, this is bad, it's bad, but that's just what I heard.
I can hear it. I can hear it.
Yeah. But like the rest of the music and the motif of the like, and when you get to the final, not the final boss, but the second phase, the third phase of the Emperor Ring, I don't remember how it plays just that ending of that part right as it goes into the boss fight. I'm like, oh, that's so good. Like maybe that's less to do with the soundtrack, more to do with the direction of how it was implemented into the game. But it's done beautifully. And then just like that. It's like a unique sound to Prime 2 that Prime 3 doesn't have either. But like just that really distorted synthy noise that it uses a lot.
Like the whistly sound?
Maybe. I don't really know how best to describe it. But it just has this sound instrument that it uses a lot in its soundtrack that just feels so unique even today compared to other Metroid games. And then the Escape theme returning for, I guess for the first time since Zero Mission, but it was a long time since that theme came back. It doesn't have the part that I love in it, where it goes into like that almost Kid Icarus sounding part, but like it's still a great take on the theme, and I love it so much. 5 out of 5.
That, yeah.
All right, I'm actually going to interject and hand this over quickly to Doe, because I believe you got to go like almost now, and so I will let you get your thoughts in for this final category before you head out.
I gotta go about 20 minutes ago, but
Sorry.
I'm here for it. I love what the music does in the game, and I don't think that it deserves to be knocked down just because there isn't like the mega bangers, the anthems. Like there's less of that in this game. But I don't think they're there doesn't have to be for a game to have good music. So I think the music does exactly what it was. What am I trying to say? The music delivers on exactly what the composers were trying to get it to do. That is a difficult thing to do as a musician, to 100% like nail the vision. Granted, maybe we think they did, and maybe they're like, it's not that good, but we got to release it, and then it's great. But it's so well calculated. I think they iterated on what Prime Music was, and leaned more into that vein of atmospheric. And I think this game is, I don't want to say more atmospheric than Prime 1, but
I feel like there's more emphasis on though.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think it emphasizes because the environments are a little bit less dynamic. I think as a player, you're maybe catching the music more, if that makes sense. And they might have known that and planned that out. I don't know. I don't think it is the peak of Metroid music. That's where I'm gonna go against the grain a little bit. So I'm gonna give it a 4.
Totally fair. Still a great score, if you ask me.
Yeah,
100%.
It is great.
Especially if like you throw in the environmental ambience in there, especially with something like Torvus. It's transcendental. It's incredible. I would listen to that in college and just sit back for like a good 20 minutes, just completely engulfed in my imagination of being in Torvus again with all these sound effects. It's definitely one of, if not the most impactful soundtrack for me personally. It's definitely one of the few where I get genuinely emotional. Like Torvus, it makes me tear up. Aim 2 Hours, another one that makes me do that. Yeah, Chica's boss fight, Emperor Ing first phase specifically.
I'm redue to visit it with what you guys are saying, because I am also just a forgetful person with a lot of stuff. So
Felt that.
Dude, I'm definitely gonna go back to your video, and I will message you in the next few days when I watch that and go, oh my god, why did I give it a 4? I'm so sorry. Please, please update it.
I'm not mad. I think a 4 is still. I think a 4 is still great. I'm not mad at all. No, and my other host Andy, he notoriously doesn't like it, and that's definitely something we butt heads over, because it's like that's like peak to me. So like, hey, any appreciation, and again, I can see why someone wouldn't enjoy the soundtrack as much as me, because it definitely, I could definitely see why, especially if you're someone who's not a fan of going to Dark Ether. Like that's a pretty huge part of the game, and the music absolutely plays into that oppressive nature into it. So I totally get it.
Makes sense.
So I definitely have to give it a 5.
I was just about to ask you, like, what is your score? So the final 5, the final score. So folks, what I'm going to do for you gentlemen, I'm not going to take the time to average all these out right now. I know Doe in particular, you got someplace you got to be, so I'm not going to keep you here for much longer. I'll edit those in post, and I'll put the results that we all had in the description when the episode releases on Tuesday for all you lovely viewers. And yeah, this was such a blast to talk about. We've been covering Echoes, all month. It still feels weird to say that it's 20. It feels like, just a couple of years ago where I played this game for the very first time. But, that just, life, it do be like that sometimes. But yeah, before we head out.
It do be like that.
Yeah, before we head out, I just want to pass it around to you guys in case you want to plug something, if you want to talk about. We'll go counterclockwise from where our screens. We'll start with Doe. We'll end on Metroid Guy. How's that sound?
Yeah.
Sure. I'm Doeboy. I've been streaming on Twitch for 10 years. Been playing Metroid games for a long time. Doom, like you, I also first discovered Metroid through Smash, technically. I played Samus, and I was like, haha, cool robot in Smash 64. And then my friend showed me Metroid Fusion, and I was like, oh my god, that's Samus from Smash. And Metroid Fusion was my first one, so I almost judge everything off of that, kind of. Maybe listeners picked up on that. I don't have any Metroid games queued up for my stream right now, but did play through Prime 1 again recently. Hopefully we get that Prime 2 remake coming up. I don't know. That's certainly something I'm looking out for. But yeah, I'm always down to chat about games, and especially Metroid or Smash or what have you, so feel free to come by my stream if you want. And thanks for listening to me blab about Metroid Prime 2 for a while. Trav?
Okay, I can go. Hi, I'm Travis Guy. I do YouTube sometimes. I just did technically just did a 2-hour video on the first Metroid Prime. I'm really happy with. And I'll be doing, my plan was to do Prime 2 next. It's going to be a bit. I'm actually going to be focusing on Half-Life just because that's kind of at an all-time high peak right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of 20th anniversaries in November. It's kind of insane.
Yeah, tell me about it. It's I stream on Twitch at Twitch TV /Trav Guy TV. My YouTube is at @ThatTravGuy. My Twitter is at the other Trav Guy because that Trav Guy was taken. And I real quick just want to say, really cool to be here. Doeboy, I know you already, so I'm not going to say any nice things about you. No, I'm just it's really nice to talk to you again. But Doominal Crossing, it's really cool to sit in a call with you for the first time because we've been chatting since like the Smash Brothers speculation days. I remember that.
That's right. Oh my gosh.
And Metroid Guy, I mean, it's thematic. I included you in a video or a tweet you made in a video I made.
Yeah.
So like, you know, full circle. It's really cool. So this is a cool little band of misfits we got here. And even Doughboy, we had that cool Metroid discussion with a mutual friend. And that was a lot of fun. So yeah. I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah, same. It's really awesome to meet just really cool Metroid fans in general, just to actually be able to just sit down and talk about one game for about like 3 hours, 2.5 hours. It could have gone longer, but
yeah, easily could have gone way longer.
Easily. I'm that Metroid Guy. I have been in a bit of a drought when it comes to videos, but I'm starting to get back into it. I streamed a couple weeks ago on YouTube. At that Metroid Guy and stuff. My next video is going to be a lore video, as I said earlier, about Quadraxis and the quads. I'm still writing it out. I want to, because I harped so much on about it in this conversation, I want to tell the story of Quadraxis and why and how they were made and stuff like that.
Ooh.
No.
Sign me up.
All right, well, thank you all so much for joining me. It was an absolute pleasure speaking with you all. I always love doing collaborations, with people that I enjoy and respect like this. And yeah, I had an absolute blast just chatting with you guys. And folks, back home, I hope you had fun with this 2-hour discussion as well. But yeah, we're gonna call it a day and sign off. Yeah, I'm kind of in the mood to play some more Prime 2, even though I just played it now. I'm all amped up now. So yeah, until next time, folks, see y'all next mission and have a good one.
Bye.